Well, let's try this again. WeatherBrains episode 693, version 2 for April 29th. It's the pre-show. We've had a maddening, problematic start, but that's okay. We'll get this thing rolling here. So I'm going to invite our regulars back in here. We had to kind of restart things. Sometimes it happens. This is the part of the show where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, say outrageous things. And I get the idea this might be a really good show. Often the ones we struggle with at the beginning are the best ones here. So be sure I got everybody in the invitation here. And let's invite everybody, and they should be back. Yeah, we started, and for some reason, we got bumped off. We just got shut down at 9 minutes and had to delete that one and start over. So let's see if we can get all of our guests back on here. There's Kevin. Want to try it, Kev?
Hi.
Let's try it again.
Again, you mean something went wrong? Set of wrecks tonight than Talladega.
Let's just ignore the whole last 35 minutes and pretend it never happened.
That's right.
Never happened.
This is the pre-show where we tell boring personal stories. What is the rest of it?
Humorous anecdotes. And we say outrageous things.
And we say outrageous things. Can you invite Leah?
Yes. Let me pull up your...
Should I believe that you can invite Leah?
I'm about to say that at the rate this going, if it happens, it'll be a miracle, but we're going to try it. How many James Spans does it take to start a WeatherBrains? That's a great show title. And wait a minute, John, you don't even have the helium sound tonight.
No, I'm right on, man.
That's what it was. It was the no helium, and then it cursed us.
No, I switched to hydrogen.
Oh,
show title.
That is a show title. I switched to hydrogen. So I have invited Leah in here. So who's missing? Nate and our guests.
Yeah, our guest is missing.
Okay, apparently we're back up on the YouTube now.
Yeah, we are live on the YouTube. This has just been a strange situation here. No, we're back, and I deleted the old 693, so we're good. Gary, can you hear us okay?
Yes, sir. James, can you hear me okay?
Look at there. It's
loud
Gary
and
Woodall.
clear.
Hey.
Hey, Kevin.
Fantastic. All right, let's get this thing started before it blows up.
Did you invite Leah?
I did.
Are you sure?
She's pick of the week already.
Now, the one I did not invite her by email, so let me do that real quick.
That's what she's waiting on.
Oh, okay. I did it the traditional way.
I tried to send Gary a traditional invite today, and it wouldn't work.
I don't want to criticize the platform too much; they'll kick us off again. But getting a little unstable
out
here.
there in California.
Yeah, getting a little unstable here. So I just sent her an email with the link. So we'll see if we can get Leah on here, and we'll maybe start before midnight. Yeah, we got people watching.
Gotta go. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I got to go see some TV here. And I don't see her. I promised I sent her the email with the link, and there she is.
There she is.
All right. Leah, talk to us. Say something.
Hello?
I see a green wall. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay.
This
Good.
is all James'
Let's get this
fault,
thing started. Yeah. No, there's no doubt it's my fault. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 693. This is the weekly show all about weather. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us. We are in the process of transitioning into the merry month of May, and it is warm where we are, Bill Murray. We hit 86 today.
Wow. And we're going into a drought, James. And do you know how I know that?
How?
Because I completely landscaped the front of my house.
Oh, there you go.
That's it. Yeah, there you go. That's one way to bring on a drought for sure. So, Troy, how warm in Austin today? Did we beat you? We had 86 here.
No, we were 86 at Bergstrom, 85 at Camp Mabry today. So pretty nice in Austin. So,
all right. Yeah. So, Kim, how about Norman? Let's see who's the warmest spot. I don't think you beat 86 today, did you?
Definitely did not beat 86. We were definitely in the mid 70s across the area. Had a good bit of cloud cover and some sprinkles, so it was kind of a dreary day, all things considered.
Kevin, is it dreary in Wichita Falls?
We're kind of waiting on the drearies. It's humid and cloudy, and I have breaking news.
Uh-oh.
Oh, boy.
Roll it.
Stand by.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
Via email just a few hours ago, I officially renounced my position as the accelerant and ceded the throne to Troy Kimmel and Kim Torko.
Wow.
It's official. You all saw the email. It's done.
It can never happen.
It's
No,
done.
never.
It's
No.
done.
Mm-mm.
It's done. So I'm going to move on to my next task, and that's welcoming.
Can't
our
believe you
next-
sent that by email, Kevin.
It's done.
You sent that by postal mail to us. You know?
It's in cyberspace and it's happening. So there. Hey, but let me introduce our guest WeatherBrain. You know, we've had some folks, and we'll hopefully have a few more graduating seniors from the University of Oklahoma meteorology class. Leah Hill's going to join us. Listen to her resumes. She's still in school. Her resume is bigger than mine. Her email signature says OU meteorology class of 2019. OWL Director of Operations, that's Oklahoma Weather Lab, Senior Reps, School of Meteorology Student Affairs Committee, Deputy Director, New Student Mentoring Program, and OU Nightly Weather Team. And she's a couple weeks away from graduation and already gainfully employed at a television station. Leah Hill, welcome.
Thanks, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm really excited about this. But
So-
yeah, apparently I have a long resume.
Tell us quickly where you're going to work, and we'll visit more with you later.
Yes, so I got a job in Springfield, Missouri. I'm initially from the St. Louis area, so I'm very excited to be going back home to Missouri, my home state.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. So that's it, James. I'm no longer the accelerant, and Leah is accelerant in training under the tutelage of Troy and Kim.
What do you mean by this, man? What do you mean by this?
It's done.
Right. I don't think this is a title we want necessarily.
I'm with you, Cam. Let's renounce it publicly.
Yeah. Let me just say, I heard, for those that don't know, we had a problem starting the show tonight. For those watching on the video side,
Everyone watching knows, by the way.
And so I heard Kevin, and he was at full form in terms of the accelerant. That position has not been relinquished. He is cranky.
Now that I've announced it, it's done.
Yeah, you are a total crank tonight. So it's going to be a good show.
We love you, Kevin.
Yeah, chief crank and accelerant,
Nope.
Kevin.
Nope.
And Dr. John, I hope you're in a better mood than Kevin. He's really cranky tonight.
I'm always in a great mood.
Yeah, you are.
With that hair, how could you not?
That's right. Well,
The hair of an angel.
thank you very much. Well, did you get some light frost this morning, Aubrey?
I was in Tennessee this morning, so I don't believe we did.
Well, we did here, and there was some snow falling yesterday across the northern tier of the state. Can't quite give this up. It's 52.9 after a high of 60 today. What's happened to spring?
It went south.
It sure
What were
did.
we doing? What were we doing in Tennessee? You're curious now.
I went to Greenville, South Carolina for the weekend to visit an old friend who used to work here at the station. My first friend when I was hired as a weekend meteorologist here. So I went to go visit her in Greenville, South Carolina this weekend. So I made a little pit stop in Johnson City, my old stomping ground. So I drove through the warm front today, actually, because it was like 69, completely clear when I went through Southwest Virginia, drove through Bristol. It was gorgeous, not a cloud in the sky. And all of a sudden, I kind of look up and I've just got, a layer of clouds and the temperature dropped to 54. And I notice I've got some gravity waves in the sky. And of course, I was out of touch with the weather this weekend, and I'm going, huh, that must be a front. So we're on the cold side of the front, and my little spidey senses kicked in. And so, Dr. John, we actually weren't too far behind you today. Our high was only 62, and we're at 56 right now. So we're on the cool side of the front, waiting for that warm front to make its little trek northward.
I thought it's kind of interesting.
North.
Here we are, April the 29th. We've already experienced 2 tornado watches here.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ridiculous, right?
Yep.
Very unusual.
And of course, it's snowing in Fort Collins and some of the Denver suburbs tonight.
Oh, big time.
So it's always interesting this time of the year. But Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest before he runs and bails on us.
Well, if he hasn't already, we're probably in pretty good shape. But Gary Woodall, the Warning Coordination Meteorologist, National Weather Service office in Memphis, 31-year veteran of the National Weather Service, has worked in West Texas, North Texas, Phoenix, before he landed in Memphis. He received his bachelor's degree in meteorology from Florida State, his master's from Oklahoma. He's focused on severe storms and spotter training throughout his career and has developed a lot of the spotter training materials that are used nationwide. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, everybody. Good to be here.
Well, we were glad you weren't adhering to that old 15-minute rule, and I don't know what it is, Lee, at Oklahoma right now, or where it is, Troy, in your classes, but how long do you have to wait on the professor anymore?
You sit there and you wait until we get to that classroom.
That's right.
Nothing else, you send the TA in and you tell him you'll wait until he gets here. So.
Well, that's what we had to do tonight. But we're glad that you joined us, Gary. Been
Gary.
An active spring so far in the Mid-South for you, huh?
It has. It got off to an early start for us. February was our first damage survey, and it seems like in our area, every damage survey that I've had to do has been on a Sunday. All of our tornadoes have been on Saturdays, so all the damage surveys were on Sundays.
Wow.
Burnsville, Mississippi, and Tishomingo County, February 23rd, wound up rating that an EF2. March the 9th, Goat Island, Mississippi, also in Tishomingo County. So the emergency managers were getting tired of seeing me by about early March, rated that an EF1. And then, of course, April 13th, that long-lived cyclic supercell that came up from central Mississippi, Sparkville area. We actually had 2 tornadoes from that in Monroe County. And then throw in some big-time flooding, aerial flooding, flash flooding, and Mississippi River flooding that we had and are still a little bit dealing with. And yeah, it's been a busy spring for us so far. So I enjoyed the mention of drought possibly coming up. We're a little bit of a break now, and it's a good chance for everybody in the Mid-South to kind of catch their breath a little bit before the rest of the severe weather season.
So this next few systems that are coming in, are you going to get some heavy rain from them?
Possibly heavy rain, and looks like we'll have some instability and some vertical wind shear as well. So we may be having to worry about severe weather as well. And this weekend is the start of our Memphis in May activity.
Oh my goodness!
Memphis, the Beale Street Music Festival will be this coming weekend, and we're already starting our weather briefings for the emergency managers and the public safety folks for that. But hopefully it'll be just some inconvenience, maybe some rain. Hopefully we can stay away from the really nasty severe weather, and hopefully stay away from the flooding.
Hey Gary, Troy Kimmel here. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.
It's been a long time. But one thing that I wanted to ask you, because based on what Bill has told us and what we all know, I've known you since the days when you were at the weather office up in Fort Worth. You have been to Arizona. You're now to Memphis. And I was sitting there driving away from the university today, and I thought, I'm going to ask Gary, talk about the differences in the severe weather you've seen from where you've been. Texas, Arizona, and now you're in the Mid-South. Severe weather, you pretty much got it all captured now, Gary, the types of severe weather you experience.
Yeah, that's for sure, Troy. Of course, I started out in Midland, Texas, and then moved up to Lubbock, Texas. And the storms there, the dry line was really the focus of our severe weather there. And in a way that was kind of nice, because that meant that the storms would form at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then be out of our area by 8, 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock at night. So the hours were somewhat more reasonable. Now, that, of course, changed somewhat when I went to Fort Worth, because that put us further east, and we would catch a little more later night stuff. And Fort Worth is really, I'll coin a phrase that Al Mohler had coined, the HP supercell capital of the world, I think. Non-tornadic HP supercell capital of the world. So yes, we had some tornadoes to deal with, some significant tornadoes, but the biggest events that I remember from North Texas were, these non-tornadic HP supercells, or some of the bow echoes that we would have move through. And so those were challenging to deal with. So when I moved to Arizona, everybody kind of teased me, ribbed me about, oh, you're getting away from severe weather. How hard is the forecast? Hot and dry every day. And yes, we did have our share of hot and dry. 119 was the hottest we got when I was out there. That was plenty warm. But the real demoralizing thing out there would be in the summers, when you'd wake up at 6 in the morning and turn on our local news and hear 92 degrees at Scott Harbor Airport. You're only going up from there. So that was a little on the demoralizing side. But Arizona had its challenges, though, because in the summertime, we'd be in our portion of the North American monsoon, and we would get moisture, and we knew where the thunderstorms were going to form every day along the mountains and to our northeast, to our southeast. The question would always be, what would happen after those storms would form? And a lot of that was driven by mesoscale or even storm scale processes. How are the outflows going to combine? Were we going to have enough flow to get the storms to really move off the mountains and down into the valley? Or were they going to kind of hug the mountains through the afternoon and evening? So from that standpoint, it was really, really challenging from a mesoscale and a storm scale perspective. Now, maybe I brought a little bit of North Texas with me when I moved out there, because the first fall that I was there, they have what they call the transition, where we go from the monsoon kind of back into the westerly flow. So you have the leftover monsoon moisture, but we have upper systems moving through as well. And we had 3 or 4 supercells that actually formed in the valley. One of them produced golf ball size hail. One of them produced 70-mile-an-hour winds. One of them produced 2-inch diameter hail. One of them produced what we conservatively estimated at 3 to 3.5-inch diameter hail in the Phoenix metro area. So that was pretty, and it was an anticyclonically rotating storm. The last one was. So there were some pretty wild things that we had to deal with out there. And now, of course, my time here in the Mid-South, a lot more nocturnal activity. The low-level jet gets going, and it doesn't matter really if it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but a lot of nocturnal activity, a lot of line, QLCS, squall line with the embedded circulations, the occasional supercell like we had on April 13th or December 23rd of 2015, but a lot more nocturnal and a lot more QLCS tornado activity here than any of my other stops.
Well, it's got to be fascinating, because I mean, the Mid-South, so much attention now given, Gary, with Vortex being relocated over to Huntsville for this season and everything else. I think we're all kind of learning a little bit more about the tornadoes of the Mid-South, if you will. Something that I think interests us, and it has to interest us when you see the death tolls that we see in those tornadoes in your neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the vortex southeast and some of the research that had suggested that Tornado Alley was maybe shifting more towards the Mid-South and the Southeast, and and James can probably and Bill probably can agree with this, that that's not news to us. We've had
exactly
of deadly tornadoes in this part of the country. Is it happening maybe a little more frequently, or are we just finding out about more of them? That's hard to say, but that's what we've used in our messaging, is that we've had a long history of deadly tornadoes here in the Mid-South, and that certainly is not going to change in the future.
Well, I think what probably is interesting, and I know you know this, but you're in North Texas or West Texas, or even high base thunderstorm country in parts of Arizona, where you could see these things coming. And Leah, no offense, up in that neck of the the woods, but there are 3 trees and 4 hills in Oklahoma. You can see stuff that's coming, basically. And then you get to Memphis and you just don't see this stuff, I guess, Gary, as much. It's just not something people see. And so the question is, do they wait to the last minute to react? And of course, that's some of the things, as Kim knows, that Vortex is looking at this year.
Well, and that was some of the things, Troy, that we saw in the service assessment from the 2011 tornadoes. I was the co-lead along with James Mulliken from FEMA on the service assessment. And the personal, the visual confirmation is still something that we have to deal with and have to work with on the general preparedness level. And that's why it's so important with our preseason activities, which all of y'all are engaged in, I know. But the preseason activities, working with our media and our emergency management partners, making sure that we're giving a consistent message that if people hear it over and over again, no matter what source they go to, hopefully that will hopefully folks will start to heed that message a little more. But Troy, besides just the public preparedness, it has had a little bit of an effect on the storm spotter training, which of course has been near and dear to my heart for
Absolutely.
3 decades now. Gosh, it's hard to say, but 3 decades now. We really encourage folks to not be mobile spotters here in the Mid-South. Now, there are some areas, the Delta area on the Mississippi River, western Mississippi, eastern Arkansas, where it is pretty flat. It's basically the floodplain from the Mississippi River. So it's pretty flat and the visibility is pretty good there. But yes, once you get further east of that, then you're into the trees and the hills. And we emphasize point spotting as opposed to mobile spotting.
Yeah.
So Gary, talk about the importance of that preparedness in the Tupelo tornado a couple of years ago. Talk about that for a minute.
Yes, it was the evening of November 5th of last year, 2018.
Wow.
We had an EF2 tornado that hit parts of Tupelo, the northern portions of Tupelo. And the next day we found out that an assisted living center got hit by the tornado. And my first thought was, oh Lord, what are we going to find when we get down there and do the surveying? So we talked with the emergency manager, as we always do when we head out, went through, did our surveying, got to the assisted living center. And there was, I believe, one injury that occurred there. But the story that came out of this assisted living center was just remarkable. It's one that we want to document in more detail. We very briefly got to meet with the owner, the director of the center, because they were busy getting their residents out and getting them situated in hotels and getting the situation kind of stabilized there. But he had been watching the forecast, hearing our messaging, hearing the local TV meteorologist messaging, knew that night was potentially going to be bad. So earlier that day, they did a tornado drill at their facility. They practiced getting all their residents from their rooms into their safe spot. He kept up with the weather that evening, and when the tornado warning got issued, they activated the plan. And all but one of the people, and this may have been the injury, it was a less ambulatory person, were able to get to the shelter. The building was hit pretty hard. A lot of big sections of roof that were missing, and some of the drone footage over it, they were looking down into the bedrooms, and you could see the furniture and all whatnot in there. But just an amazing story of why, number one, people need to have their severe weather plan. It needs to be instinctive. They don't need to think about it and figure out what they're going to do. Having that plan committed to memory and instinctively knowing what to do is important. And then number two, when the warning comes out, use that time wisely. Don't dilly-dally around, waiting to try to see the tornado or hear the roar or wait until it gets at your doorstep. Use that time wisely. And again, that was just an amazing story, I thought, that came out of that tornado.
Well, Gary, I got a question for you. You've been doing this for a long, long time now. How do you, I have spent time in the last couple of weeks talking to people about having that plan you talk about, to have that plan so that it becomes second nature. And people say, well, their whole thought is, well, that's never happened to me. And you've heard that before.
Yes.
How do you, you're Gary Woodall. You've been in all these places. You've been doing Skywarn forever. How do you convince people that get away from Burnsville and Tupelo, get away to some of the towns that haven't been affected? How do you get them to think about that plan in advance?
Well, the good news, I shouldn't say good news, but as far as something that can help with that here in the Mid-South is, again, since we've had so many significant tornadoes, people either have been through one or a member of their family or friends or coworkers have. And so there is some personal connection there to the severe weather history that we have here in the Mid-South. But another, and of course, so whenever we get the opportunity, we do that messaging. But another source that we look at is when we go out and do our school talks with the school kids, and bring that message into the homes through the school kids, because they will listen, they want to learn, and then by giving them this information, they can actually help be a leader in their household as far as getting their severe weather plans ready to go. Another little war story that I'll share way back in the Fort Worth days. Did a summer camp, and we talked about all different types of hazards and flooding, and we talked about turn around, don't drown. The counselor of the camp, his daughter was in that camp, and they brought me back the next year, so I guess I did okay. And he mentioned that there was some heavy rain and some water going across the roads, and they were driving along and came upon some water, and the daughter turned to the counselor, said, "Daddy, stop. Remember, the man said, turn around, don't drown." So again, I think going through the school kids and letting them kind of be the leaders in their households is another maybe tactic that we can use.
Wow.
That's great. Good evening, Gary. John Scully here.
Hi, John. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Gary. So it's really fantastic to sit back and listen to you talk. I know all of us really appreciate that. Were you in Memphis for the February 2008 Super Tuesday outbreak?
I was not. I've been here going on 5 years now.
Okay. I'm curious how that event, which was historic, obviously, how has that influenced your preparedness activities today?
Well, that is, again, one of those historic events that we can refer back to when we're talking about severe weather and tornado preparedness here in the Mid-South. Not only here in Memphis, but there's a city about an hour east of us that's in our warning area, Jackson, Tennessee, that unfortunately was absolutely hammered by one of those 2008 tornadoes. Union University campus was hit and damaged. So between Tupelo in 2014, the Super Tuesday of 2008, our December 23rd tornadoes in 2015, and one that is maybe not as well remembered, but was a horrible day here in the Mid-South, April 2nd of 2006. We had 26 fatalities here in the Mid-South. So again, there is a lot of history that we can refer back to. Actually, one of those Super Tuesday tornadoes, John, the office here had to take shelter briefly. Because one of the tornadoes was approaching the office. Fortunately, it dissipated, but they had to briefly take shelter from that. So even we are not immune from having to follow our own advice.
Wow. I think one of those circulations went over the airport, didn't it? It actually moved at least one aircraft on the runway.
Yes, yes, it did.
Yeah. Great.
Gary, all of my friends in Memphis, when they talk about the weather, they always bring up Hurricane Elvis.
Yes.
Talk about that event, and that one seems to be etched in the memories of folks from Memphis too.
Yes, that was a bow echo system, not a tornado, but a bow echo system that brought, I believe, 100+ mile-an-hour winds to the area back in the early 90s again, so some time ago. But yes, that is sort of one of the high water marks as far as impacts on the immediate Memphis area. The massive power outages, some places out of power for a week and a half to 2 weeks. Just huge widespread impacts across the area. So we use that as the lesson that you don't have to have a tornado for it to be a devastating event, a devastating impact here in the area. And then more recently, a couple years ago, Memorial Day weekend, we had another bow echo that moved through the Memphis area, and it wasn't as widespread as Hurricane Elvis was. Similar wind speeds, 100 to 105 mile an hour peak wind gusts we estimated from the damage that we saw. 188,000, I believe, people without power at the height of the impact. So we use that again as a real lesson that, yes, we talk about tornadoes and we plan for them, we prepare for tornadoes, but number one, we don't have to have a tornado to have a devastating impact, like I said earlier. And number two, with those high-end severe thunderstorms, again, 90, 100 mile an hour severe thunderstorm winds, they're going to cause the same impacts that an EF0, EF1 tornado would cause. So we need to basically prepare and respond the same way.
And Gary, you mentioned the importance of knowing your weather safety plan and being able to act on it instinctively. And of course, we all follow very closely the tornado that hit in Monroe County, Mississippi on April 13th. Yes. Talk about that event, a quick spin up like that gets really significant very fast.
That was a remarkable event as well. Again, that was a long-lived cyclic supercell. It was the storm that had produced the tornadoes down near Starkville, Mississippi, and very close to the Mississippi State University campus. The storm didn't do a whole lot, though, between Starkville and when it got up into Monroe County. So it would have gone through Clay County and then up into Monroe County. But it took that storm about 4 minutes to go from a lot of strong convergence underneath, which we know is a little bit of a red flag to look for, to some modest rotation to EF2 tornado on the ground and doing damage, debris, CC dropout, the debris signature, the whole bit. Took it about 4 minutes or so to that stage. And it's very close to the radar. The radar we're using is called the Columbus, Mississippi weather radar, but it's actually in Monroe County. So there is some very good low-level, high-resolution 88D data of that evolution. If anybody might be interested in working with us on a study of any sort down the line, but even looking up, the higher elevations. Of course, once you get above the they were running in the sails, so we were getting half-degree scans every 2 minutes, but the higher elevation scans we only get every 5 minutes. But there was really nothing in the volume scan before it developed at the higher elevations to make us think that, wow, that was going to happen that quickly. So again,
Gary, I mean, that tornado, and I was kind of watching that Saturday night. I mean, you talked about it being near the radar.
Yes.
It moved right toward the radar. I mean, it was moving for that radar site, it looked like.
Yeah, we feared we might lose the radar, which would have been terrible.
So did we, because we were watching the circulation, the debris signature. Of course, we went out the next day, again, a Sunday, and did our damage surveys. And the first tornado dissipated about a mile or so west-southwest of the radar site. The second tornado started about a half a mile east of the radar site.
Wow.
So it literally went through its cyclic process as it was passing over the radar.
Wow. Hey, Gary, it's Kevin Selly.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, tell us about your social media activities there in Memphis.
We are pretty aggressive. I don't know if we're the most aggressive office in the National Weather Service, but we put a lot of time and effort into our social media program. Between Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, we have about 70,000 followers total, so not bad. But we try to, obviously, before any significant severe weather event or significant weather event, we try to do video briefings and share graphics and the like, timing, potential impacts, things that, number one, our emergency management partners are going to need and our media partners are going to need for their planning, their operations, their decision making, but also for just our citizens, our public to be able to use and know what we're looking at, what we're expecting, what we're thinking may be coming. We also do some educational material. We're actually right now in the process of putting together a series of videos, maybe 2 or 3 minute videos, not just little quick 30-second hits like we've done before, but 2 3-minute videos that will go into a little bit more depth as far as planning before the event, during, and some things to keep in mind after. We also, a couple of years ago, had a couple of students, high school students, that were volunteering at the office, and they were pretty sharp as far as media and social media goes, and they actually put together a series for us called NWS Memphis All Access, where they basically followed the day shift, the evening shift, the midnight shift as far as the forecast and their activities, their operations. Went out with me on one of my county visits when we meet with the emergency managers and the media, and then do the storm spotter class. Followed our cooperative program manager out for a day working out in the field with our cooperative equipment. So it was a really neat little look into, more than just kind of the regular office tour video, but really a look at, again, that we're here, around the clock, and what we're doing, and the different things that we do besides just producing the forecasts and the warnings. So again, Kevin, we again, I think are doing a really good job. We certainly are striving to, as far as using social media as a way to, again, get not only the safety, the preparedness, the pre-event information out, but of course, especially Twitter for the fast-breaking information while storms are going on.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question is, what about the real-time or the nowcasting stuff? How is that? You mentioned Twitter, but maybe you could expand on that. And then Facebook, in my opinion, is kind of a problem with the way it leaks data out.
Yes, we try to post on all 3 of the platforms as much as we can. We have recently started using Facebook Live for one of the test offices that's using Facebook Live, and actually used that a couple of times during the Monroe County tornadoes. But we find in general that, especially before we had Facebook Live, that Facebook was really a better pre-event tool. Some of the larger scale updates, again, some of our pre-event briefings and graphics and the like. Twitter just naturally seems to lend itself better for those fast-breaking, quick radar updates, quick 1 or 2 sentence tweets if a tornado is reported. Take cover if you're in this location. Seems to be a little bit more suited to the fast-breaking events as they're going on. And then, while not strictly a social media platform per se, but we do make a very extensive use of NWS chat. Yes, I brought that with me from Fort Worth and Phoenix when I was out there. Very strong believer in NWS chat, because if we're going to be giving a consistent message to the public, our partners, and especially to our public, we need to all be on the same page. And of course, we do some of that with our preseason messaging or preseason workshops and meetings that we have. But by using NWS chat, we can make sure that we're all kind of on the same page while the event's taking place, making sure we're giving that consistent message.
One of my social media concerns, though, is if you're pushing data, especially pre-storm, to any social media platform, especially Facebook, but even to a certain extent Twitter, are you then training the audience to go there for any information? And if it's not there or not as good during a nowcasting scenario, isn't that a problem?
Well, when we do our briefings, we recommend that folks follow all of our social media channels. And when we do our general preparedness training, we recommend that people have as many ways as possible to get the ongoing warning information and the severe weather statements and the updates. So hopefully people are not just relying on one source, but are using as many sources as possible. And of course, that includes the commercial media and the commercial media's social media platforms, our emergency managers platforms. We really are emphasizing people to have as many ways as possible to keep up with the information, so that if one method maybe isn't as up to date as the others, they still have the others to rely on as well.
And you mentioned being a test location for Facebook Live. Is that something that was blessed by Washington, that yes, you guys are going to test this? And can you flesh that out for us?
Yes, we actually are sort of the second round, one of the second round, I guess you could say. There was a small subset of offices that were the original testers of Facebook Live, and we have recently been brought in and are testing it and experimenting with it as well. And again, we've only gotten to use it a few times. Again, the April 13th tornado event was its real baptism, I guess you could say. But it's going to be, I think, a way to, again, get that faster breaking, here's what's going on type information. Now, we are envisioning probably using it only for those times when we have an immediate threat to life and property. We certainly don't want to get into any sort of routine type weather cast. Basically, that's getting outside of our lane a little bit. But as far as ongoing severe weather, warnings, statements, threats to life and property, we think it can be a valuable tool there for us to use.
I've heard some grumbling in back channels from the broadcast community that the Facebook Live, especially during an event, is competitive, which you shouldn't be doing. What would you say to that?
Well, again, I think as long as we are talking about our primary mission, which is protection of life and property from the effects of hazardous weather, then I think that it is just another tool that's out there that people can use. Again, along with the broadcast media, along with all the other social media platforms that are out there for keeping up with the information and keeping up with what's going on, being able to make good decisions to protect themselves. Again, I think that we need to avoid perhaps the routine weathercast, again, staying in our lane basically, and again, keeping it focused on our mission of protecting life and property.
Hi, Gary. This is Kim. I want to just take where the accelerant emeritus has left us, and you've started to wander down the lane of talking about how you're communicating with the publics you serve. I was just wondering if you could comment on, you've commented on the meteorology of these different places that you've served, of populations of Texas, Southern Arizona, and now of the Memphis Mid-South area. So much of what's going on in the Weather Service now is about IDSS, Impact Decision Support Services, and that being central to this mission you're talking about of protecting lives and property. Impacts are so locally determined. Can you talk a little bit about what it's been like serving the populations of these very different kinds of areas and how you've adjusted to do that?
Yeah, Kim, that's a great question. It is really an exciting time to be in the National Weather Service because of these relationships that we're forming now with the people that are using our products, and more importantly, the information that we're providing. Beyond just the forecast, but the actual information and expertise that we're providing. Every place has their weather hazards, their things that they have to plan for. West Texas and North Texas, severe thunderstorms, flash flooding, maybe winter storms. Arizona, of course, the excessive heat was a big issue. Dust storms, not just for the big haboob type dust storms like we get during the monsoon, but these little localized dust channel events that we would see during the late winter and the early spring. Those were actually what caused most of the big problems on I-10 between Phoenix and Tucson. Fire weather was a big threat, a big issue that we had to deal with out in Arizona. And then, of course, coming here to the Mid-South, kind of back into the tornado and severe thunderstorm and flash flood realm. But we also have this river that runs through the center of our warning area. That is a huge factor as well that we have to deal with. Of course, the Mississippi River I'm talking about there. So while the impacts and the threats and the hazards are perhaps different, the process is all still quite similar. There's some similar aspects there. Identifying the partners, meeting with the partners, developing those relationships, finding out what their concerns are, what their, what really moves the needle for them as far as threats and hazards are concerned. And then how can we identify those threats and hazards, and how can we communicate them to us the easiest and fastest way? So a lot of different circumstances that we had to deal with, but a lot of similarities as far as, again, working with the partners and developing those relationships and finding out just what they needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you're saying, there's very different hazards that people have to adapt to. So you're going to get different kinds of weather cultures that that come up all across the country. Did you find that let's just talk about the core partners that you worked with, the broadcasters, emergency managers. Did you find that your broadcast markets sort of varied a little bit from place to place in how they covered weather? And was that a concern for you? I know it's a concern, for example, with Rick Smith here in the Norman forecast office. We have a very particular weather culture that he's had to, the herding of the cats has been a different kind of endeavor here than it would have been when he was out in Memphis. Did you notice any similarities, differences as you went across the different areas?
Some, I guess I would say. Of course, the Midland and the Lubbock markets when I was out there, smaller markets, but we worked quite well with all of the meteorology. And really, I've been fortunate, I guess, blessed, I could say, to have had really excellent relations with all of the TV meteorologists that I've worked with over the years. Out in Arizona, they maybe look to us a little bit more as far as being the weather experts or leaders, I guess you could say, especially when we got into monsoon season and the convective meteorology, the mesoscale meteorology, and the like. DFW, again, great relationships there. Interestingly, found that some of our smaller markets outside of DFW, while we worked with the individual stations quite well, a little bit more competition between the stations in those smaller markets than we would see perhaps in DFW proper. And then here in the Memphis area, again, fantastic relationships with all of our partners here, not only in the Memphis market, but also in Jonesboro, Jackson, Tupelo, and Columbus, Mississippi picks up a little bit of our southeastern area as well. So some different personalities, I guess you could say, but really, again, all of us, I think, recognize the need for the teamwork there and the need to be working together in getting that message out to the public. And I think that, hopefully, I think that sense of teamwork and that we're all kind of fighting against the same adversary, being the hazardous weather. I think, I hope anyway, kind of overrules or overrides any of the other issues that might be there.
Gary,
great, thank you.
Yeah, Gary, Troy again for a second, and at the risk of accepting Kevin's accelerant title, just like him here proudly, have a question about warnings. You and I visited about this a little bit, and it's something I noticed, and you've known me. We've been friends long enough, Gary, that you know that I go off the cliff more than a few times and get mad and pout and face turns red and that sort of thing. But I noticed a while back, and I actually found out from some of your colleagues, and you work with 4 different TV markets up there: Jonesboro, you've got Tupelo, you got Memphis, you got Jackson, Tennessee, that your tornado warnings are just a little bit different than most of the tornado warnings that are prepared elsewhere in the National Weather Service. And people should know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but that's done through WarnGen. So it's software that helps the forecasters, the people in there, when they need to get those warnings out. And the paragraph, the asterisk number 3, the paragraph everyone's used to hearing, and I'm reading one just off the top here. At 11:05 p.m., Doppler radar indicates a severe thunderstorm producing a tornado located near wherever. It looks like, Gary, and you and I, again, have briefly visited about it, that y'all have edited out the words capable of. So in the tornado warnings, it's just saying that a severe thunderstorm is producing a tornado. I'm sort of used to, when I see that, looking for an LSR, going over here to chat to kind of see where it's going on and where we're getting the ground truth from. And I know you, Jim Bellis, your MIC, you've got Tom Salem, who's your Sue, and yourself. Y'all are a great group of people. And now I've settled back. I've talked to people and say, hey, they tell me, Troy, what's the problem? That's what I'm sort of hearing. And I want to hear, I think Kim was, we're interested in hearing, is this maybe a way to go? Because y'all aren't just doing it because you think it looks cool. But what's the philosophy in removing? Now, by the way, it doesn't count the the CCs when you see it, you know, in the debris patterns, or you have spotters. Y'all are excellent in how you word your things there. But this goes in the other tornado warnings when they're just radar indicated. And so I just wanted to ask if there's a philosophy in the office about that.
Yeah, that is, and that's a good question, Troy. And yeah, we have discussed that before. Okay. And it is it's a careful line that we're trying to walk. Because if you look at the wording, kind of the default wording, if you will, radar detects a thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado. Scientifically, that is probably more accurate than the wording that we use. But our concern, and this may be something again where the social science side could weigh in. How much uncertainty is that introduced? Yeah. We have false alarm issues anyway with our tornado warnings, and even in the warnings where yes, we get a tornado, so all right, we verified. But still, you look at the area that's warned versus the area that's impacted, there still is a lot of sense of false alarming there. But the uncertainty, if we say that a tornado, we issue the warning, but the tornado essentially might be producing a tornado, is that introducing another out where someone could maybe look at it and employ the normalcy bias and say, well, okay, it's capable of producing a tornado, but it may not here. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to hope for the best, basically. Right. Now, the flip side to that is by saying it is producing a tornado, is that then leading, or aggravating what could be perceived as the false alarm issue? It's a difficult question. I don't know that there is a magic bullet as far as the wording that we can use. Again, I think as far as the social science side of things, having them weigh in and provide some guidance could help going forward. But that's basically what we were looking at, Troy, was trying to balance. Recognizing that it's not scientifically pure and accurate, but trying to balance the motivating people to take the action that we need them to take with the uncertainty that might otherwise be there. And
my concern, I guess, in a way, Walt over at Southern Region, I visited about this. We kind of had this discussion because I know we're trying to get rid of the word possibly. And by the way, I'm with you on that. Okay. The word possibly, let's get it out there. But I don't think possibly means necessarily the same thing as capable does. And that's where I sort of come from. And Gary, one other thing, and I'm going to smile as I say this because you were around when this was happening, and I just scratch my head and wonder where the Weather Service is on this, how we've gone so backwards in this. In the warnings, Gary, you remember when we changed the warn gin to where it said National Weather Service meteorologist indicate a severe thunderstorm. Gary, the radar has never issued a tornado in its life. Give the Weather Service people credit. And this is where they could do it, and it'll be crawled on every television screen in the country. And then we have rewritten this warn gin again where it says Doppler radar. Doppler radar is a tool. It does not make a warning decision. Give credit to the National Weather Service meteorologist. Please, Louis, y'all listen to me in Washington. Get this done. Give credit to the people that is due to, and that's the Weather Service forecasters in the WFOs. They issue the warnings.
Well, my opinion, and that and 75 cents will get you a can of Coke these days. But no argument here. That was something that we pursued when I was in Fort Worth, and it's not there now, unfortunately.
Well, it needs to be, and that's Troy saying that, and all the way up to Louis. Hey, Louis, let's get this done because the credit needs to be given. And I'm interested, Kim, because I know you do more of the social media sort of stuff and the social side of all this. Does saying a tornadoes with every thunderstorm, Kim, does that give you any heartburn at all?
I think, Gary, you really intuited the problem. And, it really is, there's a possible trade-off here between this repeated false alarm effect, aggravating that, and of introducing for people an uncertainty where perhaps you have really high confidence that there is a tornado, and it's you have radar evidence to go on, and that's just what you have in your area. That's really common. So I don't blame you for feeling trapped between these two extremes and trying to hedge some way. We can't give you a really good answer in the social sciences yet. The research is really mixed, and so I think you're trying to do what you can for your population that you think will work best. And it gives us the opportunity to do what's called a natural experiment. And I call on my social science colleagues to consider studying then the people in your area. Are they feeling some particular way about this? Is this having some sort of discernible effect as compared to areas around you? And can we show that it helps improve response and doesn't diminish trust? At the same time, diminishing trust is something we'd worry about with the false alarm effect. If it doesn't seem to have a negative effect, then maybe it's something to consider. So, I think that it's you've really highlighted the struggle. There's not a perfect. We can't tell you what the ideal is, and so just really interesting to see you putting this forward.
Well, Kim, I mean, also, and Gary, these are unique tornadoes in the Mid-South. In the Memphis WFO, in that office, you have unique tornadoes that they're studying this year, and maybe that's the way to go. Initially, it gave me heartburn as a media person, but then I started looking at it, and I said, well, maybe Gary and them are onto something. That. Let me ask you this, Gary, and I promise, guys, I'm gonna shut up. Well, probably not.
Gary, wait, Troy, before you go on.
Yes, sir.
The show title is clearly "How is Troy Not the Accelerant?"
Gary, got a question for you real quick. When y'all did this, did any of the media people ask about it at all, or did it pretty much go unnoticed? Because I know it's been done for a few years now, right?
It has been, and not that I can recall, Troy.
Okay.
Now, I'm 50 something now, so I'm starting to forget things. But not that I can recall.
Well, more power to you, man. More power to you.
Oh, thank you. And Kim, I know that we have had some social scientists taking a look, at least at some general warning response in Tennessee in this area. So if you want, touch base with me offline, and we can maybe follow up on that a little bit.
That'd be great. I'd love to know what they're learning. Is it through the Vortex Southeast program?
I don't remember. It actually was a year or two ago, so I don't think.
Okay.
So. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'll love to learn more. That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Leah, I think here's a great place for you to jump in and ask your question.
Yes. Okay. So I've been writing things down, my questions, but I'll just ask one of them. So the different communities that you worked in Arizona, you're working in Memphis. How have you had to tailor your message to those different communities? Because I'm guessing people in both places, they perceive the weather different ways. So how have you had to tailor warnings and such to them?
Well, there have been some differences, kind of like we talked about earlier. There are different hazards that we would have to really kind of emphasize. But there were some similarities. Again, this monsoon season, the North American monsoon that we would have out in Arizona, that was our primary severe thunderstorm time of the year. Every thunderstorm out there produces a microburst. It's just a matter of how strong it's going to be and what's going to happen storm scale wise from there. So we could still talk about some of the severe thunderstorm rules and tips and use severe thunderstorm warnings, just like we would in other parts of the country. Just the wind would be the primary hazard that we would tend to focus on. We would talk about excessive heat, obviously, but we would talk about excessive heat in North Texas and certainly here in the Mid-South as well. We would get, of course, more into temperature versus heat index out there because just the extremely hot temperatures that we would get out there. Worked with some of the other communities, though. Again, fire weather was a big concern out there. So we did a lot of outreach and a lot of preseason coordination with the fire weather community to make sure they would get our red flag warnings and we would issue them, and the fire weather watches and we would have to issue those. So there were some different hazards that we would have to deal with, but a lot of the messaging, though, the process of the messaging would be similar. Again, just making sure that the partners were aware of the hazards, could receive the message, and then knew how to plan their operations when they would get those messages from us.
Hey, Gary, this is James. I have to ask this question. Let's talk about the POD and the FAR. What's your main emphasis there? High POD, low FAR?
Well, preferably both, if we could. there is the so-called asymmetric penalty function, where if you warn and have a false alarm, then that's perceived maybe as not being as bad as missing an event, especially if it's a significant event where there's injuries or loss of life or property that occur. So it is a balancing act, but I know as long as our meteorologists are using sound science and good observational techniques and making solid warning decisions, we will basically back them. And as long as we're sticking to good science and making good decisions. Now, we are branching off as far as our flash flood warnings are concerned. We had taken a look at some of our flash flood warning statistics and realized that there were maybe some adjustments that we could make in our services to perhaps better match the advisory level flood impacts with advisories and the warning level flood impacts with warnings. And that is something that we started last fall. We're really getting into it this spring, reserving the flash flood warning not for the nuisance flooding, not for if the intersections are flooded and the like. Really reserving the flash flood warnings for the direct threats to life and property, the actual warning situations. And one of the reasons for that was not to reduce necessarily the number of flash flood warnings that we issue, but to make sure that we're reserving the WEA, the wireless notifications that come across people's cell phones, that we're reserving those for the situations that we really need to notify them through that method. We had heard situations of people, because of all of the flash flood WEAs that were coming out, about opting out of the WEA, which we definitely do not want, because that's a tornado warning mechanism for them as well. So we're doing some things to try to. We looked at some of the impacts that we get and kind of sorted them out into advisory level versus warning level. Came up with some best practices for observing and being vigilant and being ready to ramp up to warnings when needed. But again, trying to match the services to the impacts a little bit better as far as our flash flood verification is concerned. But as far as the convective tornado and severe thunderstorm, yes, we obviously want to have maximum POD and minimum FAR, but with the state of the science and the technology that we have, as long as we're making good decisions using good science, using good observational techniques, then that's pretty much the best we can do for now.
Let's talk about the handoff. And I know you've been here for an hour and you got to go, Gary, but real quick, the handoff is, best I can tell, your CWA borders 6 other National Weather Service CWAs.
Yes.
Jackson, Birmingham, Huntsville, Nashville, Memphis, Paducah, or Little Rock. And so how is that? And every weather service office is different. I know that consistency is a big deal, but let's be honest here. Some weather service offices are aggressive with warnings. Some are conservative. Some worry about the FAR, and they're not going to issue that warning every time for just a rotation on radar. How is the handoff process work with so many CWA boundaries that you're working with here?
Well, I guess the good news there is that we usually don't have storms crossing all the boundaries at once. It's either maybe coming from Little Rock into our area, or Jackson, Mississippi into our area, or our area over into Nashville, Huntsville, Birmingham. So we will usually contact the office either through NWS chat, a phone call, or we have our own internal NWS collaboration room, and we will pass along, what we're finding out about the storm if they haven't contacted us as the storm's approaching the county warning area border. But we try to make that handoff, that transition, as seamless as it can be, making sure that they know what we're hearing from the spotters, what we've gotten from the storm, and making sure that they're ready for it when it gets into warning range for them.
And your relationship with the SPC, how would you rank that relationship?
I would say overall it's good, and it's getting better, I think. I know that the SPC has started doing some things as far as pre-outlook, and of course we've had pre-watch coordination for many years now. They've started doing some pre-outlook coordination, which is a help because that lets us get our input in. Now, they don't necessarily, of course, always go lock, stock, and barrel with what us or another forecast office is saying, but they're listening anyway. And again, it's part of the conversation and part of that collaboration, and it's getting better, I think, because that's really important for us, especially going from, say, the 6Z to the 13Z convective outlook, because we do a lot of our early morning messaging in that 10, 11, 12Z time frame. And if there's no coordination and all of a sudden we go from, say, a marginal to an enhanced in our area, well, we now have a lot of fast pedaling that we need to do to get our messaging caught up and make sure that our partners are aware of the changes that have taken place. So if we can at least have that coordination, that dialogue, which again, more often than not we do, then that at least helps us start to ramp the messaging up as we go through the morning.
But in your messaging, you do use the SPC products without modification, right?
We will use the SPC products when we do our briefings, though. Say we do a video briefing, we may tailor our wording a little bit there, emphasizing that maybe not every spot that is in the slight risk is going to get severe weather, just this is the most favored area. Or if we think that it is maybe going to be significant, then we may ramp up our wording just a little bit. So we don't deviate from the SPC guidance, but we will use a little local wiggle room or local expertise in our wording that we're using to kind of fine tune that message just a little bit.
Awesome. Well, Gary, thanks for joining us tonight. This was great. I know you've got to go. Anybody else have any comments here?
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
Outstanding.
Gary, you're the greatest. Thanks for joining us on the show tonight. You're a legend in the weather enterprise. Thanks for your long years of service, and thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you all, and have a good night.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, thanks a lot, Gary. All right, we have got to roll Tony Rice in the astronomy report. And it looks like we've lost Aubrey, so we'll do a triple email next week. We didn't get her on last week for the email. We'll do a triple email next week. But let's pause real quick for Tony Rice. We'll come back with picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
SpaceX plans the launch of a commercial resupply mission number 17 on Wednesday, May 1st at 3:59 a.m. This launch may be visible along the Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina coast as the rocket travels to the northeast, chasing the International Space Station on its orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to the equator. In addition to the supplies for astronauts normally aboard a resupply mission like this one, a critical instrument for studying the atmosphere will also be part of the delivery. The Orbiting Carbon Observatory 3, or OCO-3, will be mounted on the Japanese Experiment Module Exposed Facility, a back porch of sorts for scientific equipment aboard the station. From this vantage point, it will measure the distribution of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere over about the next 3 years. OCO-3 will complement the OCO-2 satellite, which is currently in polar orbit. It will be able to more closely monitor the areas between about London and Patagonia. This will also provide a denser data set over critical areas like the Amazon rainforest. This instrument consists of 3 high-resolution spectrometers, one that measures how much sunlight the oxygen in the atmosphere has absorbed. The other 2 measure the sunlight absorption by carbon dioxide at 2 different sets of wavelengths. Now, outside the ISS is a pretty harsh place to be putting sensitive instruments like this. Temperatures can vary by about 500 degrees Fahrenheit as the station passes from sunlight to shadow on each orbit. To prevent damage, OCO3 will live in a cryocooler, a space refrigerator of sorts that will keep the detector at a frosty negative 244 degrees Fahrenheit. You can learn more about the mission at oco3.jpl.nasa.gov. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
All right, let's see. We're coming up on 14 minutes till the top of the hour. So real quick, I guess we got time to talk about this. So hang on here. I want to bring this up really quickly. Do a screen share. Oh, Kim. I am so glad we're talking about this. We are having a good, open conversation. So this came out in the Capitol Weather Gang today. So and I got cranky. This thing that's been going around, it was like 4 a.m. And I mentioned the problem that we have discovered here is that people are not finding themselves on a map. And I will show one more thing I want to screen share. This was sent to me by a high school teacher. This is a map from high school seniors, and they were asked to put their initials in their county. And understand the labels were not on this map when they were asked to do that. They all live in Tuscaloosa County. There were 18 students in the classroom, and not one could do it. And we were at the Birmingham Barons game last week, which is the Chicago White Sox affiliate here. And the Weather Service handed out 300 maps like that, county line maps, and asked people to put a dot in their county. And only 11% could do that. But Kim, you think there's not a problem. So let's turn it over to you and let's hear your side of the story.
Well, like you said, the maps were unlabeled, right? I mean, they're just
exactly
maps.
Right. And I think that's the clarifying
point. I challenge you to do this exercise with meteorologists. Give them an unlabeled county map and see how they do. No one ever sees that map. That's my main argument. Is it's kind of like this has been a critique of IQ tests for a long time. Is the stuff that they're testing, is it practical life knowledge? No. And that's the challenge that I think we face here. We communicate in counties all the time in meteorology, and so it's really natural to worry if you hear this study that says that people can't place themselves on a county map, that you might be ineffective. I just wanted to write to share a little bit of hope, because of all the things that you take on and that you worry about, James, and you take on a lot and you worry about a lot and you care very passionately for your people. The thought that you would hear this story and think that you weren't being effective in some way with everything that you do, it kind of broke my heart. And I wanted to write this story for every broadcast meteorologist that read that story and felt disheartened and felt like, am I reaching people, and doubting if they were, because you need to know you're the essential link. You are what brings the map to life for people. You especially, when I went to Alabama, you were nothing less than a hero for those people. It's because you know every cafe, every church, everything that is important to the people in every town. And everywhere that I went, people would talk about hearing those landmarks mentioned in your coverage. And that's what resonated for people. And that investment you've made of time in the local geography, it really matters. And that's how people navigate. So the secret sauce here is geographers have long understood that people have different ways that they navigate. Some people are cardinal direction people, but not very many. Most people are landmark people. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're giving people. And I found that they were really well able to reason about where the storms were from your coverage and from assimilating. If they weren't getting it from TV because there were so many storms, especially on April 27th, they went online, they referenced other maps. They found layers of maps, and I walked away very impressed. And this was a almost random sample of the population. I mean, we're talking everything from people living in very modest means, deep in rural areas of Mississippi to more urban areas of Alabama. And in this aspect, the only thing that mattered was people in urban areas cared about a smaller geography because cities mattered more to them, and people in rural areas identified more with counties. But otherwise, they all found something to look at. They all found some landmark that meant something. And so
Right.
the Post article was just talking about those findings. And yes,
Right.
people probably
we
very
need-
poorly on those map exercises.
We need hope. And I think my biggest problem, it's not during a severe weather event. Yeah, we can call out the barbecue joints and Jim Bird's farm and the Walmart. I can do all that. But in the days leading up to an event where we're showing these SPC maps and these risk areas, and that's where I'm struggling. And I wish, Kim, you could just follow maybe sometime and help me. Like, I post what I think is an easy to understand map showing the risk for the next day. In 24 hours, we have a severe weather potential. This is the greatest area where we're going to have a problem. And the first, 25 messages, the comments in the Facebook post. What about East Teboga? What about Brent? What about Centerville? What about Coleman? What about Jasper? What about Rockford? What about Sylacauga? What about Talladega? What about? Why are they asking this?
Yeah.
And my logical conclusion is that they can't understand that map, or are they lazy, or that's where I need my biggest help. It's in the days leading up to an event. We're showing a day 4 convective outlook, a day 3, a day 2. And there's just something that we're missing that I don't understand. And that's why we need more research. I wish somebody could give you $1 gazillion.
I know.
And you could go out and do this research. There's been a problem with some funding on the local studies here, and we need more of that. But having said that, I've got to go because I'm the top of the 10 o'clock. So Troy, John, Kevin, Kim, I want to pick it up here.
I want to pick it up here. Kim, I got a question for you then. In understanding what you put together about people or people being able to find themselves on a map, I've always contended that people generally in the United States are geographically ignorant. Is there, and that's Troy saying that, is there a difference in these things that we're talking about? I mean, being able to find yourself on a map. I've had a student, and I've shared this with y'all in email earlier tonight, that spent the better part of a couple of minutes arguing with me one time about the lake north of New Orleans being Lake Michigan. And I finally had to point out the difference between Chicago and New Orleans. Is there a difference in those two things, Kim, that I'm talking about? Being able to find yourself on a map, and then a knowledge of, and geography, of course, is, Kim, the geography is a study of people and place. So this finding places is only part of what geography is about. But are we talking about the same thing there?
Absolutely. No, this is a great question. And I should say my PhD is in geography. I would have to probably rescind my card carrying membership in the geography club if I didn't say, yes, we need more geography education. Yeah. And there is a woeful inadequacy of overall geographic awareness. I think that's absolutely true. So the difference, I think, is in people knowing about themselves, their own place of inhabitance, and something about their own local area, and a bigger picture into which they fall. So it's really about scale, I think. I have to admit, when I was growing up in Indiana, I knew very little about the county names surrounding me. I knew maybe a couple, but I know a whole lot more Oklahoma geography when I came out here and started storm chasing. I interacted with a bigger geography here. And so then it became more salient to me. It became more meaningful to me. And I built what geographers call a mental map. I built a set of spatial relations in my mind. I understood this is west of this is north of this is the western suburb of this city, and so on. And, I actually put everything together. If you don't travel a lot around a region, like I didn't travel around, northern Indiana a whole lot, you can sort of have blindness about other places. And so this is where geography education is so important, because it can broaden your perspective. And I think
I'll tell you, Kim, something that's interesting. In my 30 years of teaching at the University of Texas in the Department of Geography and the Environment. And I have required, during the course of the semester, the state of Texas published, Kim, a list. It's 3 pages long worldwide locations that all students should know when they graduate high school in Texas. It's the biggest laugh that that big granite building in downtown Austin ever put together down there, goofy people, because if they think any graduates in the state of Texas can find this, but I made it part of what I do in my class. I give them a half a semester to work in online atlases just to become aware of this, and I'm willing to give them 50 points during the semester. And Kim, what's interesting about that is I kind of caught hell from geographers about it a little bit, because they say geography is more than just place. It's people too. And so I've dealt with that, but I will tell you, Kim, that I've had graduates come back 4, 5, 6 years afterwards, and they said, thank you. I never thought I'd need to know where Iraq was, or I needed to know where these other places around the world were. But so I don't apologize for what I do in my class at the University of Texas.
Yeah, I don't think you should. I mean, the people are an important layer of the geography, but you can't understand the people element until you first understand the place element. So you're giving them a frame that they can use to then later put the pieces together. If they're like most adults, you learn about history as you go through life and realize how important it is. It's something that becomes more salient to people as they get their own life history and watch, things unfold on a longer time scale. And so I think you're doing an invaluable service in giving people that sense for the overall big picture, and then they can fill in the blanks as they go on.
Well, I appreciate you pointing out, I think it is scale. You do know your local areas, and maybe I still contend maybe they don't know what parish or what county they're in necessarily, but at the same time, I understand the distinction you've made. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting study. It's very thought-provoking. And what I really loved about this conversation is it helps to highlight a struggle we have in the social sciences. Actually, a couple. One is about, trying to undertake a study that tells us something meaningful about the population. It's really easy to do these idealized studies and to just do kind of a knowledge-based test. That's sort of the lowest bar, easiest thing to do. Ask people if they understand the definition of a watch or a warning. Ask people if they know the name of their county. And then try to, if you go from that then to try to figure out, well, what meaning does that have in the real world? It's a big step. We actually don't know if knowing the definition of a watch or a warning has a lot of meaning, and people being able to respond in real time, because there's so much else the communication system is doing that word itself might not be important. And so this is the struggle we're actually having in the social sciences. There are a lot of people doing knowledge-based tests, and we don't know how to apply that to understand what meaning it actually has in a real world situation. So I loved this conversation for helping to highlight that. And there's a generalizability question. What I found in the Southeast might not generalize to all populations. Right. I had a friend say, well, he's worried about his students as a college population in Texas. Right. And I said, yep. I mean, I worry about those people too, because there's no population probably as ungeographically as aware as this bunch of young people who are in a place they've never lived and just don't know anything about the geography.
And that's one thing. Leah's still with us, and Leah, you've got OU Nightly. You've got this stuff that you work on up there. Does this ring a bell with you at all, or do you feel like you're in pretty good shape as you prepare to move out into the world? You've talked about what you're going to do now. Just interested in getting your feedback, and tell us a little more about OU Nightly and some of the things that y'all do up in Norman.
Yes, well, I will say this about the geography thing. On the first day of our synoptic meteorology class, our professor had us all take a geography quiz, and more than half of us failed it. So general population, it's an issue with us meteorology students as well. It was kind of embarrassing. But to answer your second question, yes, so I'll be graduating in just under a week and a half, which is kind of insane. Thank you. I just have a little bit to get through, about another week of exams and whatnot. But started out with OU Nightly. I don't know how familiar everybody is with it, but it's our student-run newscast at the University of Oklahoma. I started with them my freshman year as a shaky legs, getting up in front of the green screen, trying to describe fire weather. Had never done that before, and pretty bombed it terribly. But it exposed me to the broadcasting world, and I fell in love with it ever since. So it's
It sounds exciting. And the one thing I have to tell you, Leah, Kevin Clazel and I are good friends. And of course, Kent, we all know each other from up at Norman. But the one unique thing, if people aren't aware of what Norman offers and the National Weather Center and the campus there, I've always said that universities are not the real world. They're not. Universities are not the real world. You've got to get out and intern. You've got to get out in the real world to do that. And what I'm so impressed with what happens at OU in Norman is if you go out, you can walk across the parking lot to any one of those other 5 buildings, Leah, and maybe get an internship over there. Undoubtedly, this is something that you've done. And then they're giving you opportunity with OU Nightly and things like that. This is getting out in the real world. And universities still are a little short in that, because you've got to get off the campuses of universities to really understand what the real world's about, unless you're going into academia, maybe.
Yeah, it's very true. Honestly, a lot of the internships that I've gotten, it's just been a matter of emailing one of the chief meteorologists in Oklahoma City, but even the students here, they've always been really good. I've, passed on contact information from meteorologists to my friends and being like, hey, I interned with them for a semester. Maybe you can intern for them next semester. But even just the faculty here, they're really good about sending out emails for opportunities for internships and jobs. So it's honestly incredible what we have here.
When's your job start up in Springfield, right?
Starts on June 10th.
All right, Leah.
And then about a month off until I actually started. So I get to relax, kind of unwind from the stressful finals week.
Yeah. Where is home, Leah?
Home is St. Louis.
Okay.
So from St. Louis County. So
cool.
Moving a little bit closer to that area.
Well, that sounds good. Well, congratulations on your graduate. Kim, I guess, Leah, everyone's left us.
Right, I know. We're an island.
And they were saying you and I were the troublemakers, and they apparently will trust us. And Leah's hung around as long as she has. So
That's me.
We've quickly become the old guard, guys. Here we're supposed to be young upstart troublemakers. Well, Leah, did you have a pick of the week?
I did. So I actually shared this on my Facebook page a couple weeks ago, and it's just something that I love to read. So it's the 7 most unreasonable expectations about weather forecast. So this includes anything like people will be mad at us for breaking into TV shows, or the expectations that our forecasts have to be exact to basically the decimal, or the saying it came without warning. So this just covers a few of those things, saying why it's ridiculous that we have to even be responsible for these expectations or something. So that is my pick.
Awesome. Great pick. And Troy, did you have a pick, or did you already go over your pick?
No, I'm bad about my picks. You know that, Kim. I sit here and I come up on Monday and I just don't have anything except to tell you right now in Austin it's 72.2. It is we've got some high and mid-level clouds over the area, and it's a beautiful night in Austin.
Awesome. Well, beautiful. Thank you for that very happy, upbeat weather report. And if I hadn't written my own pick of the week, I don't know that I would have had one. I felt like I was cheating.
We need to coordinate that, Kim. Next time you give it to me, and I'll use it as a pick of the week, and then I'll pick something for Leah, and we'll just take care. We'll cover each other. So
I like this.
Love it. All right. Well, I think we've rounded up the show. So thanks to everybody who's watched us tonight, and have a great evening, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hey, been a lot of fun as well. And a special thanks to Gary Woodall from the Weather Office in Memphis. Great guy. I've known Gary for a long time. Thank you, Gary, for being on with us earlier tonight.
Absolutely. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Yes. All right. Thank you, guys. Great having Gary on the show tonight. Fun show. And I hate I missed the end of it. I'll go back and listen, which I always do. I listen to the whole show every week on the way driving around to schools and stuff. But and sorry for the delay in getting us on the air tonight, but that's the way it goes sometimes. But thank you guys for watching. Got to get back to the TV side. You'll have a marvelous week, and God bless. Bye-bye.